I Okay, finally it's on recording. All right. So that's all about what the session is going to be like. So we're going to be using certain worksheets for people who are going to attend the session like this, like the ones who are going to come to the class at 10 a.m. on every Saturday, unless announced otherwise. You people would be working together with me on the questions here. But for rest of you who cannot make it to the session, of course, these are all recorded sessions. You will see an updated playlist once the session is over. Maybe in the next 2 or 3 days, you can come back, check on your calendar, and see a link to the playlist which has these recordings, right? So do not directly send a request to the recording. Don't click on that. Please go to your calendar and open the YouTube playlist link so that you can access. If you put a request to the actual recordings that would be there on the calendar, they probably will not give you an access. So make sure that you click on the YouTube playlist link so that you can access the sessions. And the materials that I use for the session are all uploaded in the supplementary tab section of your dashboard. Please visit the dashboard and access the materials over there, right? This is like an additional boost to your overall understanding of the lectures and the questions you probably have already solved in the grading assignments. So you will learn a few things more here, but not the content we discuss won't be very different from what you have heard in the lecture, since this is supposed to be a hand holding session, right? This is supposed to be something that is used to help people who need assistance with understanding the topics which are part of your modules. So what we discuss here would not be like quite different from what you've heard in the lecture, but it may have certain differences, and that differences are included only to better your understanding of the concept, right? So we are not going, this is not a teaching session, so I'm not going to teach you any concept here. We're only going to work on the questions, and in case we have doubts or problems in having understood the concept, then we're going to talk about it a bit, right? So this is no teaching happens here. Because you anyway already have the video content, so we don't want to be repetitive with any of this. So that's about the session. So next week onwards, you can make your call. If you think it's going to be beneficial, please stay back. Otherwise, watch them at your own pace when they're recorded and uploaded. If not, if you're good on your own, then well and fine. We have no issues with that. Okay. Okay, all right. Let me start with what I'm going to do today. So I am going to be dealing with the first module for today's class, which is on sounds, right? So for a lot of us, maybe this is the first time we are looking at language in this way, right? We are all familiar with most of these aspects, but probably an approach to learning language with an introduction to sounds could be new to some of us, maybe not all. Some people probably have had exposure to this, but for quite a lot of us, this could be the first time we are, looking at something like this, right? Okay. So what we'll do is, no, I am not sharing anything. When I share my screen, you will definitely see it. I'll certainly ask you for a confirmation. That's how I usually function. So, yeah, coming back to what I was talking about. So it would be nice that we begin at least the first session with a little bit of discussion on this, but this is not going to be the modus operandi for the rest of the sessions, right? Because I think the remaining part of the modules, the topics in the modules that we have are familiar ones. But since this is like a new thing, I usually do a little bit of discussion before I get to the actual worksheet for this session, right? So just give me a moment. I'll share my screen and I'll show you what we are going to be talking about today. Okay. Okay. Okay, let me know if you can see the screen. I have now shared it, but I'm not sure if you can see it. I can see it. Are you all able to see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so
Ma'am, I have some doubts regarding the sound lecture. Can I ask?
uh, probably towards the end of the class, we'll first discuss a little bit on this, and then you can maybe go ahead with your doubts. Okay, I'll not exceed beyond 10:45 today, maybe because today is the first class. So before we end, maybe you can ask whatever doubts you have. Okay, and another thing is for doubt clearance, I would appreciate if you people can, um, come to the live sessions on Wednesdays because it would be helpful for everyone who's attending the sessions, right? So, if you can make it to the session with your doubts on Wednesdays, then it would be a nice thing to do because maybe several people have same questions. So if it is addressed there, then it's in the best interest of everyone in the batch, right? They can have access to this as well, but I think it would be more organized if we can raise all our doubts at a single place. But if it is something that is related immediately to what we are discussing in the class, that's a different story. Of course, you can ask it here. Okay. So for today, we're going to be, I mean, today maybe we won't discuss all of what you see on the screen, but for the first session, for the first part of the Learn the Rope session, we are going to be discussing the sounds of English, right? And there are three things that are going to be mainly discussed. First would be the vowels and consonants, then the long and the short vowels, then voicing, places, and manners of articulation. Now, before I begin talking about this, I must at the outset tell you that this is something that is going to require a lot of practice, right? If you are familiar with the sounds in English, which of course we are, but there are certain peculiar sounds in English which probably is not as articulate to us as we think we do, right? So, for example, the vowel sound O, right? In the Indian subcontinent, for all the languages that we speak, no matter which language family they belong to, we all have the sound O, right? But this sound is absent in English, right? The O sound is completely absent in English. People do not use O in English, right? But what they have is another counterpart of that sound, which is O and O, right? The long and the short part. O as a sound, we do not generally use in the English, right? And by English, I mean English when spoken in places that predominantly speaks English. Okay, English is spoken in India as well, but when we mark these differences between the sounds, we are referring to places where English is spoken predominantly, right? So we're all going to be, if you're going to stay back, very nice and fine, but some of us would like to move our places, right? We probably would like to travel abroad or secure an admission there or even work there. So it's always nice to get your language a bit neutralized, right? We don't mean we should ape anybody's accent. That's absolutely not required. But it's always nice to get your spoken language a bit neutralized so that people can understand us better, right? So that's the only purpose. This is, I do not want this to sound like a problematic statement, and it is not. This is not accent training, right? There's nothing wrong with the way we speak, but all we need to do is if there are problems of comprehension because of the way we speak, right? If there are issues with people in understanding how we speak because of the way we speak, then we can work on it a little bit to neutralize it. That's all, right? Do not overread into that statement. This is just a practical advice. Okay. So for the first part, before even we deal with the vowels and consonants part, I want you to pay attention to the figure that you see on screen, right? You probably have seen this already in your lecture, right? So What do you understand from this? So this is like a cross section of your throat, right? Or what is also known as your oral and nasal cavity, right? Um, what do you understand from this? So like on your left hand side, you have, you have several things written: hard palate, alveolar ridge, lips, teeth, tongue, velum, larynx, uvula, glottis. What are these called? You can talk. You don't have to silently listen to me. That's not necessary. It's going to be extremely boring if that's the case.
Articulators.
Yeah, articulators. And what do we mean by articulators?
Ideas.
No. Articulators, see, all of what is there on your left hand side are called articulators. Articulation is what? When you use the word articulation, what do we mean?
They modify the sound that
Describing
comes out of the vocal cords.
Modify the sounds, okay, that's one thing. So these are the roles of the articulator, right? So articulation as such means production, right? Articulation is basically production. When I say articulating a sound, I basically mean production of a particular sound, right? So this track, this vocal track that you see on the screen, this is usually in language learning. This diagram is usually used to introduce mechanisms of speech production to people, right? Part of something that we call as articulatory phonetics, right? It's a branch of linguistics, and it deals with the production of speech sounds, right? You might wonder why should we discuss about this, but this is also something that helps us understand why we cannot articulate certain sounds the way, say, somebody else from a different part of the country or different part of the world does, right? Or why is it that we cannot speak English as, a native speaker in English speaks, or why I cannot speak Tamil as a native speaker of Tamil speaks it, right? Why I cannot speak Gujarati like how someone who's actually a native speaker of Gujarati does, right? So articulators are important to understand this part, because articulators tell you that we have physical speech organs that help in speech production, to talk, to articulate the sounds that we use to speak a language. And as we age, all of these organs, all of these articulators, so to speak, they mature, and it becomes difficult for us to then, produce a sound the way, say, a native speaker can. So, say by the age of 6 or 8, all of them undergo physiological maturation, and the kind of sounds that we can then produce using our vocal tract becomes thoroughly restricted, right? I'm not saying it's impossible. It is possible, but it requires you to have a lot of training to do that, right? And while we say physical organs required in speech production, please understand that our human mind also has a role to play in all of this, right? So it's not just a mechanical thing, but language as such is also a product of the human mind. So there are many things, working together to make speech happen. And this is only a part of it. Articulators are only a part of it, which mature through age, and which, by the virtue of which, it becomes difficult for us to produce certain sounds in the way, maybe say the native speakers do, right? So it's not a deficiency, right? If someone is not able to speak in a certain way with a certain kind of accent, it's not because, they are weak in language. It's not because there's something deficient. It's a natural, maturation process that happens in the body, right? If you're exposed to these sounds as a child, then you can speak as many languages as you want. But if you have had no exposure as a child to it, then obviously there would be restrictions in the way you use a language, right? So this is just the theoretical part. Now, we'll get back to our actual work. We need to understand the articulators to understand the sounds, okay? Yeah, is there any question? Okay, right. So these articulators are important for us because it is through the understanding of these articulators that we are going to look at the various sounds in English, right? So hard palate, okay. So see, you can look at this diagram either from backward to forward or forward to backward. by which I mean you can begin at, lips and then teeth and then ridge and then palate and then velum and then uvula and then the glottis, right? So from your mouth to your trachea, go back to your voice box. Or you can alternatively begin from, how the usual process happens, like the airstream mechanism. So air is pushed into your larynx, and from there it passes through your vocal cord, reaches your uvula, then velum, and then the palate, right? The ridge, and then the teeth and the lips. So this is basically the flow of air, right? So speech is produced during the inhalation or the exhalation of air.
Exhalation.
An exhalation.
Right? Exhalation. So basically, you need to push out air. The airstream mechanism functions in such a way that the air from your trachea needs to be pushed out of the mouth in order to produce the sounds, right? So the natural course of looking at it would be then, beginning with the air passing through your larynx and then finally reaching your oral cavity and, finally out of the mouth, right? So that should be the natural pathway that you can take. But to understand this, you can use any of the method, and there's no hard and fast rules about that. Now, the sounds that are produced with the obstruction of air. Now, when we say that the sounds are produced through exhalation, what we also mean to say is that as the air flows out of your oral cavity or the nasal cavity for that matter, this air gets obstructed at various places in your mouth, right? In the oral cavity. You see the cavities here, you have three here: nasal, oral, and pharyngeal. Pharyngeal is not important to us as English students because English doesn't have pharyngeal sounds, okay? There are certain languages like the Arabic or the Armenian which might have pharyngeal sounds. Pharyngeal sounds are usually described as, sounds, in the common terms. I'm not using the scientific terms because probably a lot of you are not familiar with it. So, have you heard of people saying that, this sound seems like this comes from the stomach, right? Or it seems like there's an additional bruise in the sound as you articulate it. Like, the sound kha, right, as in the word khabar in Hindi, right? So this kha is actually not the way how a lot of us might be saying. Like we have ka and kha, the aspirated kha, but the kha that you hear in khabar is not that. It's khabar, right? So this feels like, it comes right from your stomach, right? To put it in the layman terms. Of course, there are other words for it, but just for the sake of understanding, say something that comes from your stomach. So these are referred to as pharyngeal sounds. But in English, we do not have pharyngeal sounds. Most of the sounds we have are nasal and oral sounds. So nasal sounds are when the air is exhaled through the nose, right? When there's a airflow through the nose, you say that the sound produces nasal, like ma or na or nga, right? These are all nasal sounds. And rest of the sounds, when they are when the air is released through the mouth, you call them oral sounds, right? So it's a very simple difference, right? So as far as articulators are concerned, if you consider them as the air flows out through the mouth, right, or the nose, they get obstructed at various parts of your mouth, right? So the place at which the airflow is obstructed, based on that, right? Based on that particular articulator, at which articulator position where the air gets obstructed, you have different kinds of sounds. So distinct sounds that we hear are produced by the obstruction of the airflow at various parts of your mouth. So if I'm going to begin with the lips, right? So as you speak, right, when the air is released through your mouth, and if both your lips are involved in the production of that sound, then you call it a bilabial sound. So any sound that is produced, beatbox comes under, I do not know. If that is the case, then probably you can take a look at that. I am a little bad with all those things. I think beatbox probably is that, right? I understand that, but I am not sure if it is pharyngeal, okay? And also, when I talk about sounds, I am talking about sounds that are meaningful, right? Not noises, right? So our discussion is mostly with sounds which you can combine to form words and then later on sentences. Basically, something that is meaningful, a meaningful unit of sound, not like a noise, right? Okay, right. So bilabial sounds are sounds wherein your lips are involved. When both your lips are involved in the production of a sound, which means the air basically gets obstructed at your lips before it's released, right? You call them bilabial sounds. So bilabial sounds, can you give me examples? I'll show you the chart, but just for the beginners.
B, F.
Correct. So p, b, m, right? Someone said fur, right? I heard fur.
Yes.
Now the fur is a very it's a different kind of sound. So in our languages, the sound fur is basically a bilabial sound, right? You say fur, phal, right? But in English, the sound is not a bilabial sound. You have this sound fur, right? But it's not like the fur that we use in Hindi or few other languages, right? It's not like the
Ma'am, it
thud.
touches the lower. Ma'am, it touches the upper lips and the lower jaw.
Huh.
Ma'am,
Correct.
is it dento-labial?
Labiodental, correct.
Labial.
But my point is that the sound that this per sound that you have in Hindi and other adjoining languages, it is not the labiodental f in English, right? So you don't say fal, right? You can say that to yourself. You say fal. So that's a different kind of sound. For us, the pha in the word phal is a bilabial sound, but that sound is absent in English. What we have in English is pha, like fan, right? Wherein your upper teeth touches the backside of your lower lip, right? The backside of your lower lip. This is pha, labiodental, right? This sound is different from the Hindi pha, phal, right? Keep that in mind. So these are all like minute differences between languages. These are language specific. And these are also, sounds that can run into trouble when you're actually speaking in English, right? So when I have to say favorite in English or say fun, right? F-U-N, fun, it's fun. So fur is a labiodental sound here. You can't say fun. You probably have heard people around you, maybe say people who are a little elder to you, or people from certain regions of the country who might say pun, right? And this basically happens because we get confused between the fur, labiodental fur in English and the bilabial fur in our language. Okay? You don't have to go into this kind of details, but since you brought it up, I thought it would be interesting for you to know that these are two different sounds. Okay?
What about bh?
Which one? Sorry?
BH. Bh.
Bha. Bha is a different sound. No, it's a bilabial sound, but it's an aspirated bha, right? But in English we don't have aspirated bha. Okay.
Yes.
Only in our languages we have kha and bha and tha, the. English doesn't have too many aspirated sounds. It only has 3 aspirated sounds. We learn about them a little later, in the later modules. Once you're done with stress and all, you will get to know about them. English doesn't have aspirated sounds, right? Aspirated
Ma'am,
sound, you understand? Sorry?
Ma'am, what type of sound is short vowel oo?
What kind of sound is short vowel? You already gave me the answer. It's a short vowel. Ooh.
Ma'am, and
Uh,
No, ma'am, but
sorry?
does it come in the alveolar, retroflex, or
No, no, no,
velum?
no, 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 no. See, vowels are these are sounds that are produced without any obstruction of the airflow, right? Uh, Consonants and vowels, the basic difference between them would be that vowels do not see any kind of obstruction while of the airflow while the air is released out of the mouth, right? Like you say ah or e or oo, you don't see any obstruction. The air easily and very freely flows out. So none of these articulators have got anything to do with the vowel sounds, right? But consonant sounds, they face obstruction as they flow out of the mouth. Okay, got this part? So oo has got nothing to do with bilabial or anything. Okay,
Okay, ma'am.
ma'am, what about
right. Which sorry, which sound?
um
We don't have any sound like that in English. And is it's not a vowel. It has it's a compound. It has two sounds. It has and m together, or at best you can say it is nasalized right. So even not nasalized, because if it is nasalized, it should be not even is it's not a sound as such. It's not like a pure sound. You cannot categorize it under either vowel or consonant. Forget about the letters that we are taught at school. That has got a very different purpose. But that's not how you analyze sounds, right? Sounds need to be available as single meaningful units. Okay. Of course, we have diphthongs, but they are a different category, right? Diphthongs again have to be combination of vowels, not a consonant and a vowel. So it doesn't work like that. Okay. I am not looking at the questions. I see several questions in the chat. Close करते हैं. हाँ. Okay. Right. Right. So bilabial sounds are then produced because of the obstruction of the airflow at both the lips, the upper lip and the lower lip, right? Then comes teeth, right? Now, teeth and lips can have sounds like the one which we just discussed, the fur sound, right? The fur and ver, both are labiodental sounds. Fur and ver. So fan and van, right? They are both labiodental sounds. So the articulators included, or the ones involved, are lips and teeth. Now this ver sound in English, right? Van, as in VA and van, it's a labiodental sound. Now this sound is different from the ver that you hear in the word world. Okay, let me just type it out for you so that it's easy. So you have van versus the word world, right? Please look at your chat box. Van and world, right? These are two different sounds. So van is a labiodental ver and world is a bilabial ver. Okay, so you need to round both your lips as you say the sound ver in the word world, right? So it's not world, it's world. Okay, whereas in the case of van, it's like your labiodental fur, right? Van. So your upper teeth touches the backside of your lower lip. Van. So these are two distinct sounds in English, right? I'm pointing this out because these are a few of the sounds where you can sound little different from the English speakers, right? So if there are people who wish to work on these subtleties, you can try looking at these sounds more clearly and more seriously. But if you think I'm well and fine, I'm still articulate and people can understand me, then it's okay, right? This is only for people who think that no, I should really work on these things, right? Okay, so that's the difference between and were. Okay. What happened? Is there a question?
Va.
Sorry. Did you have a question? I cannot see your name because I'm using a small screen, but if you have any, please go ahead and ask. If you don't, then mute yourself so that, we don't have interruptions. Okay. So, were and were. You can practice this at your pace. Please have at least, 10 words or something that you have prepared on your list. And then you can work on these words to practice. Okay. All right. Now, the next set would come from, so you have lips, you have teeth, and then comes your alveolar ridge. Okay. Can you see the alveolar ridge in the figure here clearly?
Yes,
I've moved my cursor to that part, right? Can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is this alveolar ridge?
When we have pushed backwards in the upper muscular range.
It's like the hard part. Srishti, can you please mute yourself?
क्या चीज?
Srishti. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Yeah, the alveolar ridge is the hard part right above your teeth, right? That part is called the alveolar ridge. And the sounds that are produced by the obstruction of air at your ridge are called alveolar sounds, right? Now, what are alveolar sounds? Sorry, did we discuss teeth? I don't think we discussed teeth, right? Okay, correct. So after we do this, maybe we'll go to, I don't think I've discussed dental sounds with you. Okay, so are they dental sounds or alveolar sounds?
Dental.
Dental.
Alveolar sound.
So say these words to yourself and see the, okay? And are they dental sounds?
No, ma'am.
Yes,
Then
ma'am.
what are
Dental
they?
sound.
Alveolar.
They are alveolar sounds. T, t, d.
No, we are not going to. So okay, so we'll come to a little later. But how about the and the? I want to know that from you first.
Dental
Ma'am,
sound.
they are dental.
Dental sounds.
Dental sound.
Dental sounds. Okay, so why do you call them dental sounds? Do we have an articulation at the teeth?
The tongue and the teeth.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you
Tip of the
tongue
tongue and
correct. Absolutely. So the tip of the tongue and the edge of the upper teeth, right? The and the right. The if you have been articulating it as alveolar sound, then you need to now work on that, right? So the and the. Okay. Both of them are dental sounds in English, right? The and the. Okay. What are alveolar sounds now? So someone was mentioning the, right? I heard that. So the is alveolar or dental? The.
Alveolar.
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 Okay. Can you clearly understand that is alveolar, or do you think that there is some misplacement there? The. You said
This
the.
is palatal sound, ma'am.
Okay.
Palatal
You say
sound.
it is palatal. For people who are saying this is alveolar, okay. Why do you think it is alveolar? Do you see that the tongue, so whenever you talk about alveolar sounds or palatal sounds, the tongue is very active, and even for dental sounds, right? So there should be an obstruction at the alveolar ridge. So when you say "t," do you hear? Do you feel that? Do you experience that? T.
Ma'am, when we say
Hmm.
t, our tongue rolls to the upper part.
Absolutely. So the sound that you have, we've been speaking about, which is a very common sound in the Indian languages, is absent in English.
Retroflex.
We don't have the sound. This is correct. Absolutely. This is a retroflex sound, right? We have a lot of retroflex sounds in Indian languages. Particularly as you move from the north of the India to the south, right? All the languages that are spoken in the south of India, which we refer to as the Dravidian languages, or languages that belong to the Dravidian family, the number of retroflex sounds just increases exponentially, with Malayalam being the language with the highest number of retroflex sounds. Okay, by the time you reach Kerala, there are at least 6 or 8 sounds that are retroflex in nature, right? So you're right. As far as the articulation is concerned, your tongue rolls upwards towards the roof of the mouth as you say, or as you try and produce the sound t, right? So t is not an English sound. It's an Indian language counterpart of the sound t in English, right? So what they have is a t. That's an alveolar t. Right? So when you say like table, this is an alveolar sound. Or you say something like dog, right? This is an alveolar sound. So both t and the, they are both sounds in English. And when used in English, t and the, they are both articulated as alveolar sounds. Whereas in the Indian context, if you're using it in the Indian languages, t and the are usually used as retroflex sounds and not as alveolar sounds. Okay? So keep that in mind. So you don't say table, you say table, right? You don't say dog, you say dog, right?
and the
That's it.
retroflex sounds more deep to it, like t and t. It
What
difference.
is it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I did not get your point. What was that? Retroflex sounds are?
Yeah. They make a deep sound. You know.
No, there is nothing deep or, open about that. It's just about the way you articulate it, right? So
Yeah,
when
we
you say
can
t
make
and
a
d, you
difference
don't have
between
to.
t and
Sorry.
t. We
Uh-huh.
can make a difference between t and t. It's easy.
Uh-huh.
Like t
No,
is making a deep sound.
even your see, you have usually in our language, articulation of the way you write retroflex is by, you use a nukta right under that and say that, okay, this is how we know this is a retroflex sound. But even your normal t and d that you have, they're all retroflex in our language. We don't usually have the alveolar t and d in the Indian languages. All of them are retroflex. Okay. But English doesn't have it. They have no property of retroflexion in them. That was the point I was trying to make. Okay.
Yes, sir. Got it.
And it's not about deep, deep, you can, if you want, you can articulate that sound also as deep. So this is not about anything to do with it. It's more about how your articulators behave when you produce this sound, right? What is their position? Where does the air get subtracted? It's more of a mechanical thing. So it is, right now we are not discussing acoustics. So deep and, shrill and all that would be part of acoustics. That has got nothing to do with speech production. Okay, this is truly only the roles of articulators to have the sounds as we say, right? Okay. So you have t and d as alveolar sounds. Now, what are the other alveolar sounds in English? You have s and z,
Na,
right? You have s, na is na alveolar. Yeah, na is also alveolar. Correct.
na,
Okay.
ra, la,
Ha. So what is that? Sorry.
ra, la.
R.
Yes.
R sound is not, okay, yeah, that is also an alveolar. You can say that. But more commonly, you have, so for that matter, even L, right? You can say L, R,
Yes,
S,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
the, Sh
Sa, za,
and J, right?
za.
All of them are alveolar sounds, right? N, T, D, N, R, L, S, Z, Sh, J. There are many alveolar sounds for that matter. Okay. So all of these sounds that I just mentioned would be the alveolar sound. So group them under that. Just keep in mind that the and the should not be included as alveolar, right? They are purely dental sounds. Okay. The and then a whole bunch of sounds which are alveolar sounds, right? Retroflex, of course, we are not discussing since they're not part of our discussion for the course. How about, oh, sorry, where are we? Alveolar sounds. Okay, no, alveolar sound. Palatal sounds. I think probably I have also told about palatal sounds because we discussed sh and j and all that, right? So sh and j, these are sounds which are palatal. Now, what is palate? Which part of this diagram is palatal? Like in simple terms, if you have to talk about palate, what is the palatal region in the
Roof of the
figure that
mouth.
you see?
The back of the roof of the mouth.
Not back. You can simply say the roof of the tongue, right? So whatever the roof is, right? The part that runs parallel to your tongue, that's called the roof of the tongue. That part is the palate, right? So in certain texts and figures, I think there's a distinction between hard palate and soft palate and all that. But we can just call it the palatal region, right? That should be more than enough. Now the sh and j sounds are basically palatal in nature, right? So you say sh and j when there's a good enough contact between the upper part of your tongue and the roof of your tongue, you have the production of the palatal sounds, right? So sh, j are usually the sounds that are palatal in English. Okay. Then you have the next one is velum, right? After the roof of the tongue, you have the velum here, right? This part of the cavity. And velum is again what? It is the back of the roof of your tongue. So after the palate, The roof, you have the back part where it ends towards the, throat part, towards the cavity. This part of the roof of the tongue, the back side of the roof of the tongue is called the velum, right? And the sounds produced in this region are referred to as the velar sounds, okay? Now, velum is a very important organ, right? In terms of whether the air flows out of the mouth or the air flows out of the nose, okay? So when does the air flow out of the mouth? Is it when the velum is raised or when the velum is lowered?
When the velum is raised.
When the velum is lowered.
Okay. So when the velum is raised, you have what kind of sounds?
Oral sounds. Oral sounds.
Nasal.
Oral sounds. No. Correct. Oral sounds. If the velum is raised, then the air flows out of the mouth. Okay. So you have oral sounds. If the velum is lowered, then the air flows out through the nose and then you have the nasal sounds. Okay. That's how it is. So velum is in that sense a very important articulator, right? It controls whether the sound that you produce, the sound articulated, has a nasal quality or not. Okay. So when lowered, the air flows through the nasal cavity and you have nasal sounds like m, n, and ng. Right? In English, you have 3, m, n, and ng. In our languages, you have many, right? With again, I probably Malayalam having the highest number of nasals. Okay. So that's also because it has a retroflex sound. So it also has the nasal retroflex counterpart. English has only 3, ma, na, and nga. Okay. Then comes uvula. Now, uvula is a lobe-like structure that hangs from the roof of your mouth right towards the end. This uvular sound is absent in English, but again, like I mentioned, there are certain other group of languages which can have uvular sounds. I cannot articulate the sound for you because I cannot, right? Like I spoke before, we all have physiological restriction in the production of uvular sounds. Probably people who are exposed to it as, children or at their younger age probably can. We can only at this moment understand the description of that sound, but we cannot articulate it, right? I cannot. Maybe there are people who can do that. But uvula is not it doesn't play a major role in speech production in English sounds. We don't have any uvular sounds, okay? Same goes for pharynx, pharyngeal sounds like we already discussed. Then you have larynx, vocal folds, glottis. All of them are in general responsible for the production of sounds, right? Because the sound needs to pass through these cavities, these organs, before it finally reaches the articulator and gets obstructed and produced, right? For our purpose, we need to know the bilabial sounds produced at the lips, then the dental sounds at the teeth, and then the labiodental at the interface of lips and teeth, then alveolar sounds at the alveolar ridge, palatal sounds, and the velar sounds, okay? Plus the nasal sounds that are produced with the, release of air through the nose. So this much is enough for us to understand the English sounds, or that's what forms the English sounds, okay? Any questions as of now before we take a look
Hello,
at the vowel?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, tell me. Okay, so I think I will take up this part in the next class because it's already 10:55 and I knew you will have some questions. So maybe let's stop for now and you can ask me questions if you have any, okay?
Ma'am, what about positive voice and negative
Just a
voice?
moment, please raise your hand so that we don't, just a moment, please raise your hands so that, we do not speak over each other. So I'll call you one by one, just give me a moment. Okay, the first one is Monu Sahu.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, professor also told about in articulation of consonant sound. What about ASP sound and minus ASP sound, positive ASP sound, and minus voice sound
Okay,
and
okay.
positive voice
Okay.
sound.
Minus ASP sounds and plus ASP basically means aspirated sound. So we were discussing about k and th and the and all that, right? So aspiration basically means an additional puff of air as you articulate the sound. So you have k and then you have k, right? As in kamal and khargosh, right? In English, we don't have that. So English only has very few aspirated sounds, namely the sounds stop, as you refer to them as p, ch, and k. Okay, only these three sounds are aspirated in English, but you don't have to bother with that part right now because you need to learn the concept called stress to understand aspiration at this point, right? Aspiration of per, and k. So plus ASP is with aspiration and minus ASP is without aspiration. Okay. That's what it means.
Okay, and voice, positive voice and negative voice.
Voice is, if there is a vibration in your vocal cord as you articulate a sound, you call it plus voice, right? If that doesn't exist, if there is no vibrations in your vocal cord as you produce a sound, then you call it minus voice. So it sounds like p and b, right? So p and b both are bilabial sounds. P is a voiceless bilabial sound, and b is a voiced bilabial sound. You can, try this yourself. When you say p, you can touch your throat. Don't press it too hard, but lightly press your throat as you articulate the sounds p and b. When you say b, you can feel that there is, an additional vibration. There's too much vibration in your vocal cord area. So this is called voicing. Okay. So p is unvoiced and b is voiced. Voicing basically means vibrations of the vocal cord. Okay.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Okay. Now, please lower your hand. Next is Aditya Ghosh.
Yes, ma'am.
Aditya? Huh.
Ma'am, in the word could, ma'am, does there is an short vowel oo or an long vowel oo? I am little bit confused about this.
Which is the word could?
Yes, ma'am. WOULD. Would.
Okay, would. Huh. So, see, when you have questions on long and short vowels, what you should ideally be doing, okay, just make this a practice because you're going to have plenty of questions on that, even for the qualifiers and otherwise, right? Just look at a few words, right? Have a set of words prepared for both the long and the short vowels. You can use examples that are given in the lecture, or you can come up with your own words. If you're not confident enough to come up with something on your own, use the words that are the pairs that are given in the lecture, right? So have this pair ready hand so that you can compare with the word that is given in the question. So for example, if I'm using a word like, say, pool, right? P-O-O-L, pool. And then I have a word like wood in the exam. All I have to do is I compare with pool and wood. So I say pool and wood to myself. Pool, wood, right? Then I know that, which one is long and which one is short. So in wood, you then have a shorter oo, the shorter counterpart of the vowel woo. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So use this as a method to answer questions on long and short vowels. Okay, have a set of words ready for each of the long and short set of vowels. And the moment you have a question, please use the other word and do a contrast analysis, right? You call this the contrastive analysis. Just keep this word side by side and articulate the words to yourself and see, which one has a longer duration when produced. Okay, Aditya.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, next is Ashish.
मैम व्हाट इज मीनिंग ऑफ फ्रीकेटिव? फ्रीकेटिव का मतलब क्या होता है मैम?
किसका समझ में नहीं आया? क्या था वर्ड? क्या था आपका?
फ्रीकेटिव.
Fricative. हाँ. अच्छा, fricative तो we have not reached till fricative. But fricative का मतलब simple meaning would be कि as the air flows out of your mouth, na, when you're articulating, there is a friction. Okay, before it is released. So fricative, you can understand it better using the sounds, है ना? तो कैसे sounds होते हैं fricative? Can you give me examples? English में.
Fan.
Sorry.
Fan.
No. The sounds, I mean. Okay. Just give me the
Fur.
sound.
Fa.
So
Fa.
fricative.
Va. The. Then.
F,
Just them.
V, sh,
The.
st, z. These are all
Ja.
fricative sounds. So if you, if you quietly articulate, slowly articulate this to yourself, you will hear, you can feel a friction while the air is released in the production of these sounds. No, as you say s, you say z, you say f, you can feel a friction before the air is released, right?
Yes, ma'am.
This is why they're called fricative sounds. Okay. So the
Yes, ma'am.
basic part is in the mechanism, there is a friction involved before the release of the sound, right? So similarly, you have plosives. Okay, plosives are what? Plosive sounds or obstruents, stops. I think in the lecture, the word stops is used. What are stops?
What's meaning of, ma'am?
Stop sounds. We haven't reached
Uh,
the discussion on manner of articulation, but since you asked the question, stop sounds would be p, t, k, these are all what? They're stops. Now, why do we call them stop? Because before you release the air, right? Before you produce the sound, what happens? You hold the air in the oral cavity for a little, for a few seconds, and then you release it with a force. Okay. So that kind of sounds are called stops. Another word for these sounds are plosives. इनको plosives इसलिए बोलते हैं क्योंकि you hold that sound a little bit the air a little bit in the mouth, and then you suddenly release the air. So it almost gives you a feeling of an explosion, right? That's why they're also referred to as plosives. So you can call them plosives या आप उसको stops बोलो, एक ही बात है. Fricatives are when there's a friction as you release the air. Okay.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? Any other questions? So the first 2 weeks, maybe I will definitely take up the questions for the next class because I would like to cover a few sessions for you before you go to the qualifiers, right? So today is the first class. That's why I wanted you to familiarize with these things because I know a couple of the topics that we are dealing with in the first module could be new to some of you, right? But otherwise, we are not going to go in this detail, right? We usually get to our business. We immediately start working on the worksheets. But because it's the first class and because I thought this could be a little new to you, I'm spending some time on this. Okay. But next week, that is on next Saturday, we are definitely going to take up the worksheet for this session. Okay. Right. For any other questions that you have, you can, of course, come to the live session also and get it cleared. And if it's something that's related to what we discuss in the class now, then of course we can get it cleared here. Kamlesh, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, what are glottal sounds?
Glottal sounds are sounds that are articulated at the epiglottis, but don't worry about it. We don't have them in English except for her. But the English her is not like an entirely glottal sound. Okay, it is categorized as a glottal sound, but it does not have too many features of glottal sounds. Her, right, sounds like her, which apparently are produced when the air is released through the epiglottis, right? In the diagram, you might have seen something called, not epiglottis, glottis. Okay, where is that? Let me show you. This one, right? You see this part? It's like a cavity, just like your oral and nasal cavity. So if the sound is produced due to the obstruction at glottis, then you call it a glottal sound, right? So glottis is more like a cavity, right? It has very less space for any obstruction because it's on the root of the windpipe. So which is why you have a sound like it almost sounds like, you are not, you're articulating a vowel sound, but then it has, given the fact that they are not produced anywhere in the oral or the nasal cavity, particularly the oral cavity, we don't call it a vowel, right? It comes from the glottis, hence you classify them as consonants. Okay. If it was produced anywhere in the oral cavity and was released without any obstruction, then we probably would have classified it as a vowel. But since it's from the glottis, it's a part of the consonants. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, what are approximate?
Approximants are sounds that are produced when you allow free flow of air around the tongue. You know, as you say this word, you can see that, the tongue is really free to move around. You know, it sounds like R and L and all that. When you say these sounds, the tongue easily moves around in the mouth. There's a lot of empty space as you say these sounds, produce these sounds. So you call them approximants. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Got it. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. They're also in certain texts, I think they're also referred to as laterals. Laterals because there's a lot of airflow on both the sides of the tongue. Okay, so lateral sounds like a more accurate description of Leandra, but yes, some texts can also use the word approximants. Okay. I see some messages here. Quickly looking at that. We have classes every Saturday. Yes, we have classes every Saturday. Yeah, you can leave. Please feel free to leave. You're not bound by anything here. Yes, voiceless, lottal, fricative. Yes, you will get the document for sure, but please wait for another 2 or 3 days before these people can upload because today is a Saturday. So maybe by Monday or so they will upload. Okay. Okay, all right, guys. If you have no more questions, of course, you'll have more questions. We have more sessions coming up, so you can save some for that time. Yes, correct. I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me. The documents are already uploaded, actually. Okay. Sorry for that short sight. I completely forgot. The materials are already uploaded in that supplementary section, right? So I completely forgot about that. You can access it from the supplementary tab now. All these documents are already uploaded. Thank you, Dilip, right, for pointing that out. Please go ahead and access them. You do not need to wait. For the documents, you can access it from the dashboard. And for the session, maybe please wait until Monday, right, before they can upload the session. Okay. Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. What kind of question we will see in qualifier from content which is taught till now? You can rely on your grading assignments and practice questions to understand the pattern of questions, okay? Additionally, you will have a reading comprehensions, but most of the other question would be, even within the reading comprehension, the questions would be mostly of the kind that you've seen the practice questions, right? We try to keep them as such and not usually take the traditional comprehension passage level questions. So by which I mean, even in the comprehension questions, they will take up a word and then ask you, whether this word has a long vowel or a short vowel, that kind of questions. So please stick to the questions you see in the practice assignments and the grading. That should be okay. Grading assignments are same for everyone. There's no difference.
Okay. Please provide PYQs.
Sorry?
PYQs for practice.
PYQs, I don't know where to access them. I don't know if there's an official channel for that as well. But let me check. I'll check with the team if they...
Unofficial.
So,
Yes, there.
I don't know. Unofficial, I cannot talk about. If there's anything official, I'll let you know. So, okay. Okay. All right. See you all again next week then. Thank you so much for joining and I hope this was helpful for you. No, you don't have to learn all the phonetic transcriptions, Abhi. Please don't bother with that. Please, learn and understand the sounds. You should be able to identify the sounds. That should be more than enough. You really don't have to bother with the transcriptions. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. See you again next week. And please keep writing to us in case if you have any issues. Okay. See you. Thank you so much.